Hey everyone, I'm working to hit 1,000 subscribers and I need your help to get there. If you enjoy this content, please hit that subscribe button right now.
Practice window, so he'll be out there today, which is, outstanding for Deshaun. He's been working so hard, rehabbing, so finally to get out there on the practice field with his teammates, go through individual, I think is really great for him. So excited for him. His focus, my focus is obviously getting him back to playing football, practicing football, which he hasn't done in over a year. So it's good next step for him. But
the Cleveland Browns are standing at the edge of a cliff, and what happens next could either launch this franchise into contention or send them spiraling into another decade of disappointment. We're talking about decisions that will echo through the halls of First Energy Stadium for years to come, decisions that could make or break careers, reshape the entire roster, and determine whether Browns fans finally get to experience sustained success or continue their painful tradition of watching other teams celebrate championships. Right now, as the final games of this tumultuous season tick away, there's a young quarterback fighting for his professional life on the field, while executives in the front office are locked in war rooms debating moves that could shock the entire NFL. This isn't just about winning or losing anymore. This is about vision, about timing, and about having the guts to make bold strategic decisions when the pressure is at its absolute peak. The fascinating part is that nobody outside that building knows exactly which direction they're going to turn, and the suspense is absolutely killing Browns Nation. Let's set the stage here because this situation is more complex than a Rubik's Cube wrapped in a mystery inside an enigma. The Browns are virtually guaranteed a top 10 draft pick, and current projections give them better than a 70% chance of landing inside the top 5. That's prime real estate in the draft, the kind of position where franchises are made or broken. But here's where it gets really interesting. Cleveland has 2 first-round picks this year and 10 total selections in the draft. That's serious ammunition, the kind of draft capital that general managers dream about. You can build an entire offensive line, completely revamp a receiving core, or make a massive trade-up to grab the guy you believe is the next generational talent. But the elephant in the room, the massive complication that colors every single decision, is Deshaun Watson. Love him or hate him. And Browns fans have certainly run the full spectrum of emotions regarding their star quarterback. Watson is under contract and carrying a cap hit that would make even the wealthiest owners wince. We're talking about over $80 million next season. That's not a typo. $80 million for a player who has been injured, inconsistent, and unable to recapture the magic that made him one of the league's most electrifying players during his Houston days. That contract essentially handcuffs the organization through at least the end of the 2026 season, unless they pull off some sort of financial wizardry that would require a degree from MIT and a minor in creative accounting. Now enter the wild card, the plot twist that nobody saw coming at the start of this season, Shadeur Sanders. This rookie signal caller has been thrust into the spotlight, and he's guaranteed to start against the Titans in what could be the most important audition of his young career. Head coach Kevin Stefanski hasn't committed to Sanders starting the rest of the season, but reading between the lines, the opportunity is absolutely there for the taking. The Browns have quietly sent signals that if Sanders performs, if he continues to show growth and improvement, he might just play himself into the starting role for the entire 2025 season. Think about that for a moment. A rookie quarterback, thrust into a chaotic situation, now has the chance to completely alter the franchise's draft strategy and future trajectory. This creates an absolutely fascinating dilemma that's keeping the front office up at night. Do you commit to a young quarterback who's already in your building, who's getting valuable reps, showing flashes of genuine promise and learning your system in real time? Or do you use that precious top 5 pick on one of the few draft-eligible quarterbacks who actually look worth the investment? Guys who could potentially be franchise cornerstones for the next decade or more. Because let's be crystal clear about what we're talking about here. Top 5 quarterbacks don't come cheap. They arrive with $40 million price tags and immediately become the face of your organization. That's the kind of commitment you absolutely do not make unless you are 100% certain, unless you're willing to bet your job, your reputation, and the franchise's future on that decision. That's precisely why so much is riding on Shadeur Sanders and his performance in these final games. His outings against the Raiders and Niners have already generated serious buzz around the league. Yes, there were mistakes, the kind of rookie errors you'd expect from someone still adjusting to the speed and complexity of NFL defenses, but there were also genuine flashes of real promise, moments where you could see the talent, the arm strength, the decision-making ability that made him such a highly regarded prospect. If Sanders can build on those performances, if he can show consistency rather than just occasional brilliance, then the Browns might feel completely comfortable passing on a quarterback altogether in this draft and investing those valuable picks elsewhere. But if he doesn't, if Sanders struggles or shows that he's not ready for prime time, then Cleveland has absolutely no choice but to strike while the iron is hot. That's where two names dominate every conversation in scouting circles: Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. These are the only two quarterbacks in the upcoming draft class who truly look like top-tier talents worthy of a top 5 selection. Mendoza, standing at an imposing 6'5" with a cannon for an arm and 32 touchdowns on his college resume, is being projected by many analysts as the potential number 1 overall pick. Cleveland has desperately lacked a big-bodied franchise quarterback with that kind of physical profile for years, maybe even decades. The image of Mendoza in a Browns uniform, towering over the offensive line, firing lasers downfield to open receivers, is the kind of vision that makes general managers salivate. Meanwhile, Dante Moore brings something entirely different to the table. He's a Cleveland native with deep ties to the city, an Oregon product standing at 6'3" and 206 pounds, and he's currently ranked as the number 1 quarterback on Mel Kiper's board. The hometown narrative is powerful, almost irresistible for a franchise that has struggled to find identity and connection with its fan base. Imagine the marketing potential, the emotional resonance of a hometown kid leading his city to glory. Either Mendoza or Moore could realistically become Cleveland's pick, but only if Shadeur Sanders doesn't make his case over these final games. Here's where the situation gets even trickier, more complicated than a playoff overtime scenario. Even if the Browns fall completely in love with one of these prospects, they might not actually have a realistic chance at landing them unless they get aggressive and trade up. Remember, there are other quarterback-desperate teams sitting ahead of them in the draft order. The Titans, who are in full rebuild mode, the Giants, who are clearly moving on from Daniel Jones, the Saints, who need a long-term answer at the position, and even the Raiders, who might be looking to upgrade. Cleveland could very easily find themselves sitting at pick 5 or 6, watching helplessly as Mendoza and Moore come off the board before their name is even called. But here's the thing. Here's why this situation isn't completely hopeless for the Browns. They have the ammunition to move up if they really want to. With 2 first-round picks and those 10 total selections throughout the draft, Cleveland possesses the kind of draft capital that can facilitate a blockbuster trade. If Andrew Berry and the front office become convinced that either Mendoza or Moore is their guy, the franchise quarterback they've been searching for since the return of the Browns in 1999, they have the assets to make it happen. That means the evaluation process has to be absolutely flawless, laser-focused, leaving no stone unturned. They need to watch every snap, conduct extensive interviews, bring in these prospects for private workouts, and make absolutely certain before pulling the trigger on a trade that could cost them multiple premium picks. But wait, there's yet another layer to this already complicated situation, another factor that makes this decision even more difficult: the astronomical cost of drafting a quarterback in 2025 while still being financially shackled to Deshaun Watson. That $80 million cap hit looms over everything like a dark cloud that just won't dissipate. Even if Cleveland were to draft someone like Fernando Mendoza with a top 5 pick, he almost certainly wouldn't start immediately. The Watson contract essentially guarantees his roster spot through at least the end of 2026, unless the Browns execute some sort of miraculous financial restructuring or make a trade that seems nearly impossible given his contract structure. So here's the question that's driving Browns executives absolutely crazy. Does it actually make sense to draft a quarterback now, using premium draft capital, when the earliest you could realistically start him as your full-time guy might be 2 years down the road? That's 2 full years of development on the sideline, watching Watson play while your highly drafted rookie waits in the wings. Some would argue that's actually ideal. that sitting and learning behind a veteran is the best path for young quarterbacks, pointing to success stories like Patrick Mahomes and Jordan Love. Others would counter that it's a waste of critical development time, that quarterbacks need live reps to truly develop, and that burning 2 years of a rookie contract with a player on the bench is organizational malpractice. This legitimate concern, this tension between immediate needs and long-term planning, might actually push Cleveland to adopt a completely different strategy, waiting until the 2027 draft class, which by all early accounts and preliminary scouting reports looks absolutely stacked with generational quarterback talent. Think about the names that could potentially be available in that draft. Arch Manning, the nephew of Peyton and Eli, who carries perhaps the most famous name in football history. Dylan Raiola, who has drawn comparisons to elite pocket passers. DJ Lagway, an athletic freak with unlimited upside. And for Ohio State fans, the potential availability of Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith, both of whom are already generating top 5 buzz despite being years away from draft eligibility. If the Browns can field a competent, competitive offense behind Shadeur Sanders, or if they can simply ride out the remainder of Watson's contract without completely imploding, they might find themselves in a far superior position to go all in on a franchise quarterback in that loaded 2027 class. Imagine having Watson's contract finally off the books, possessing cap flexibility to build a complete roster around your young quarterback, and having your pick of legitimate generational talents instead of settling for the best available option in a weaker class. The strategic move then becomes crystal clear in this scenario. Trade down from that top 5 pick this year, accumulate even more draft assets and future picks, then use all that capital to systematically bolster the offensive line, completely revamp the wide receiver room, and strengthen the secondary. Build a championship-caliber roster now. Create a foundation that can support a young quarterback, then strike for your franchise signal caller in 2 years when the timing and talent align perfectly. And that brings us right back to the central question. The issue that's dominating every conversation in Cleveland right now is Shadeur Sanders literally playing for the Browns' entire future. If he delivers down the stretch, if he proves beyond any doubt that he can handle the pressure and continue growing into the role, the Browns can comfortably delay their quarterback search and invest those valuable picks elsewhere. The offensive line needs reinforcements desperately. The wide receiver core lacks a true game-changing number 1 option. The secondary, despite having talent, needs depth and another lockdown corner. But if Sanders falters, if those occasional flashes of brilliance don't coalesce into something more consistent and reliable, Cleveland will have absolutely no choice but to roll the dice in 2025 and bet big on either Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore. That's a franchise-altering decision, the kind that general managers build entire legacies on or watch their careers crumble because of. Let's now dig deeper into the ripple effects if Cleveland does indeed decide to pass on drafting a quarterback this year. That decision wouldn't simply reflect belief in Shadeur Sanders and his potential, it would fundamentally set the tone for how the Browns allocate their critical draft capital across the entire roster. With 2 first-round picks and 10 total selections at their disposal, the opportunity exists to plug multiple roster holes that have been brutally exposed throughout this disappointing season, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The offensive line, once considered the bedrock foundation of this team's identity, has been inconsistent at best and devastatingly injury-prone at worst. If Shadeur Sanders is going to succeed, if he's going to develop into the quarterback this franchise desperately needs, Cleveland absolutely must protect him. Investing one of those first-round selections, or perhaps even trading down slightly from the top 5 to accumulate additional picks while still landing an elite offensive tackle, would be franchise-altering smart business. This draft class features legitimate depth at the tackle position, and Cleveland could secure a long-term bookend to pair with Jedrick Wills or potentially replace him entirely if his injury concerns continue. Then there's the glaring issue at wide receiver. Jerry Jeudy has shown flashes of the talent that made him a first-round pick, but this unit desperately lacks a true game-changing weapon. Amari Cooper is aging and may not be in Cleveland's long-term plans. There's no legitimate number 1 receiver on this roster, nobody who strikes fear into opposing defensive coordinators. Taking a receiver early, especially if they execute a trade-down scenario, becomes an extremely realistic and attractive option. Names like potential first-round receivers could be available in the 10 to 15 range, depending on how the board shakes out. Imagine pairing Shadeur Sanders with a dynamic young receiver who can stretch the field, win contested catches, and give this offense the explosive playmaking ability it's been missing for years. And we absolutely cannot ignore the secondary. With Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome both dealing with various injuries throughout the year, the cornerback group desperately needs another young, talented defensive back. That second first-round pick, if not used to move up for a quarterback, could be the perfect opportunity to add another lockdown defender who can match up against elite receivers. This is especially critical in a division where you're facing weapons like Jamar Chase, George Pickens, and Zay Flowers twice every single year. You need corners who can go toe-to-toe with that level of talent without requiring constant safety help. But what if, despite all the risks, despite Watson's massive cap hit and Shadeur's genuine potential, Cleveland decides to draft a quarterback anyway? That decision would tell you everything you need to know. It would signal that the front office has become completely convinced that they've seen enough to know that Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore is simply too talented to pass up, and they're willing to eat Watson's contract, stash their new rookie quarterback behind him, and begin the long grooming process for a future takeover in 2026 or beyond. That's why Fernando Mendoza becomes perhaps the most compelling name in this entire conversation. At 6'5" with elite-level arm strength and tremendous production at the college level, he absolutely fits the mold of a prototypical franchise quarterback in the modern NFL. If Cleveland's scouts fall completely in love with his game tape and he crushes his interviews, demonstrating the intelligence and leadership qualities they're looking for, it's not remotely hard to imagine them making the move regardless of the complications. The same logic applies to Dante Moore. The hometown narrative carries serious weight, more than casual fans might realize. There's a genuine belief among talent evaluators that with the right system, proper coaching, and adequate time to develop, Moore could transform into a legitimate star. The beauty of the Cleveland situation is that he wouldn't be expected or required to start immediately. He could learn, develop, and prepare while Watson plays out his contract. For a young quarterback with enormous upside but some refinement needed, that might actually be the absolute perfect scenario for his development. But again, every single path, every potential decision, every possible scenario circles right back to Shadeur Sanders. If he gives the Browns even a reasonable basis to believe he can competently hold the starting job through 2025 and potentially beyond, then spending a top 5 pick on a quarterback this year feels like a luxury the team simply cannot afford. Not with the offensive line needing upgrades, receivers requiring serious investment, and even the coaching staff facing evaluation and possible changes. Speaking of coaching, there are still legitimate questions surrounding Kevin Stefanski's long-term fit with this organization. If the Browns underperform significantly in these final games, particularly on offense where he calls the plays, it's not remotely difficult to imagine a coaching change entering the picture this offseason. That's another critical element we have to keep in mind as we game out these scenarios. A new coaching staff might arrive with completely different quarterback preferences, their own offensive system and philosophy, and that could change absolutely everything overnight. If Stefanski finishes strong and earns another year, that continuity might actually benefit Shadeur Sanders tremendously. He'd continue developing in the same system with coaches who know his strengths and weaknesses. But if ownership decides to clean house and start fresh, a new head coach or offensive coordinator could walk through the door wanting to draft his guy, the quarterback he believes in and wants to build his system around. That reality makes the case for drafting Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore even stronger in certain scenarios. There's also one more fascinating angle that Browns fans should be actively thinking about: the trade market and the immense value of their draft position. If Cleveland ends up holding a top 5 pick and ultimately decides to pass on selecting a quarterback, that draft slot instantly becomes one of the single most valuable assets in the entire draft. Quarterback-desperate teams like Atlanta, New England, Las Vegas, or even dark horse contenders could offer an absolute haul of picks to move up and grab their franchise quarterback. If the Browns can trade down, remain in the first round while dropping back several spots, and simultaneously pick up multiple Day 2 selections or even an additional 2026 first-round pick, it could set them up beautifully to fill out the roster and prepare for that quarterback-heavy 2027 draft class. So here's the chessboard laid out in front of Andrew Berry and the Browns' brain trust. Option 1, stay put at their current draft position and take a quarterback, believing wholeheartedly that he's the long-term answer despite Watson's contract complications. Option 2, trade down, go all in on surrounding offensive talent, roll confidently with Shadeur Sanders while betting on his continued growth, and position yourself perfectly for 2027. Option 3, go bold and aggressive, trade up for Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore, and completely reshape the quarterback room starting today regardless of the cost. Each path carries substantial risk. Each path could either extend Cleveland's seemingly endless rebuild into yet another frustrating chapter or dramatically accelerate their rise into legitimate contention. But if there's one absolutely crystal clear truth in this entire complicated conversation, it's this. Shadeur Sanders now holds all the keys. His performance in the final games of this year could single-handedly determine not only Cleveland's 2025 starting quarterback, but influence the team's entire draft philosophy, roster construction strategy, and organizational direction for years to come. That's exactly why every single snap matters right now. Every drive, every touchdown, every interception, every decision under pressure is being scrutinized by coaches, executives, and scouts who are trying to project what this young quarterback might become. The pressure is enormous, perhaps unfair for a rookie thrust into this situation, but that's the reality of playing quarterback in the National Football League, especially for a franchise as starved for success as the Cleveland Browns. The beautiful part about this situation is that nobody really knows how it's going to unfold. Will Shadeur Sanders seize this opportunity and play himself into the franchise's future plans? Will the Browns fall in love with Fernando Mendoza's physical tools and trade up to grab him? Will Dante Moore's hometown connection prove too compelling to pass up? Or will Cleveland take a completely different approach? Trade down, accumulate assets, and build a complete roster while waiting for that loaded 2027 quarterback class? One thing is absolutely certain. The decisions made over these next few weeks will reverberate through this franchise for the next decade. Browns fans, who have suffered through more disappointment than perhaps any fan base in professional sports, are watching with bated breath. They've seen this franchise make wrong decision after wrong decision, watched potential franchise quarterbacks slip through their fingers, and endured endless rebuilds that never quite led to sustained success. This time feels different somehow. Maybe it's the draft capital. Maybe it's the potential they've seen in Shadeur Sanders. Maybe it's simply hope springing eternal in the hearts of fans who refuse to give up on their team. But whatever happens, whatever direction the Browns ultimately choose, it's going to be fascinating to watch it all unfold. So Browns fans, make your voices heard. Should the organization go all in on Shadeur Sanders and build the roster around him? Should they draft the next potential face of the franchise regardless of the financial complications with Watson? Should they trade down and accumulate assets while waiting for that stacked 2027 class? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, because this is a decision that affects every single person who bleeds brown and orange. And listen, if you made it this far, if you've stuck with us through this entire deep dive into the Browns quarterback situation, do me a favor. Smash that like button right now, hit subscribe so you never miss another update, because we're going to be all over this story as it develops. Tap that notification bell so you get alerts the second we drop new content. We've got draft coverage coming, behind-the-scenes breakdowns, exclusive analysis, and all the news you care about before anyone else gets it. The Browns are at a crossroads, and we're going to be there every step of the way documenting this journey. Go Browns, and let's hope they finally get this decision right.